Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Try again. Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. You better be more on your toes than that next Sunday for Easter, okay? Because I love to be playful on Easter Sunday. The Passion story begins in Mark's Gospel with a woman bringing a jar of expensive perfume and pouring it on Jesus' head. Now, some who were there, which would have been at least some of the disciples, if not all 12, as well as some other people, were kind of upset because she would waste the perfume like that. It could have been sold for more than a year's wages. And, they could have done a lot with that. But they didn't get exactly what was happening here. Even this close to his death, even with all that Jesus had tried to teach them, they just didn't get it. Jesus tells them to leave this woman alone, and to leave her alone. That they're always going to have the poor with them, but he's only going to be with them for a little longer. Then one of the disciples, Judas, he's just had enough. Can't take it anymore. Now, he was the treasurer, and at times his temptation would become a little too much for him, and, sometimes some of that money would be just a little much, and he'd convert it to his own use. So with the wasting of this perfume, Judas, that was just it for him. And he goes out to the chief priests. Now notice they didn't approach him. Judas approaches them. He goes out to the chief priests and he offers for a price to betray Jesus to them. And we'll hear more about that later. But on the first day of the Passover feast, Jesus sends 2 of his disciples into the city to make preparations for the meal. And in the evening, Jesus and the 12 gather for the meal, that meal that we often refer to as the Last Supper. So from Mark 14, we're going to begin with chapter 14, verses 18 through 25. And when they had taken their places and were eating, Jesus said, "Truly I tell you, one of you will betray me, one who is eating with me." They all began to be distressed and say to him one after another, "Surely not I." He said to them, "It is one of the 12, one who is dipping bread into the bowl with me. For the Son of Man goes as it is written of him, but woe to the one by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been better for that one not to have been born." While they were eating, he took a loaf of bread, and after blessing, he broke it and gave it to them and said, "Take, eat, this is my body." Then he took a cup, and after giving thanks, he gave it to them, and all of them drank from it. He said to them, "This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many. Truly I tell you, I will never again drink of the fruit of the vine until that day when I drink it new in the kingdom of God." One of you will betray me. What does it take to betray someone? In order to betray someone, you have to have been on the inside. You had to have had a position of trust. And so it was with Judas. In the Middle East, in Jesus' time, and even still today, to have a meal with someone says, "You are my friend. I trust you, and you can trust me." Judas was one of Jesus' dearest friends. He was one of those chosen 12. But he broke that trust. Why? Why did Judas betray Jesus? Maybe it was greed. Maybe he was disappointed that Jesus had not turned out to be the militaristic leader that the Jews were waiting for. Maybe Judas was trying to force Jesus to overthrow the Roman rulers, trying to force his hand to use his power. Judas may have been scared at the apparent change in attitude toward Jesus, and he wanted to save himself. We don't know. We just don't know. But we do know that Judas made a deal. He blatantly and intentionally betrayed Jesus. Jesus gives Judas a warning, but it doesn't stop him. But notice all of those others, disciples. They were all questioning it. Surely not I. And Jesus says the one who dips his hand into the bowl, well, they were all dipping their hand in the bowl. They were all dipping in the same bowl. Every one had the potential. So before we are too quick to condemn Judas, we must realize Judas was in every one of those disciples, and Judas is in every one of us. Every time we fail to give of ourselves emotionally, give of our time, give of our money, give of our possessions, every time we fail to give of ourselves, we betray Jesus. We betray Jesus when we hold grudges, when we harbor hateful and spiteful attitudes toward others. He wants us to reach out to a hurting, lost, dying world. We betray him by concentrating on our own needs and more often our own wants. We betray him when we hear his word and don't respond. Why did Judas betray Jesus? Why do we betray him? But the good news is that even though we betray Jesus every day, through his death and his resurrection, Jesus gives for us the means for reconciliation. He's willing to forgive each of us every time we betray him. When they had sung the hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. And Jesus said to them, "You will all become deserters, for it is written, 'I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered.' But after I am raised up, I will go before you to Galilee." Peter said to him, "Even though all become deserters, I will not." Jesus said to him, "Truly I tell you this day, this very night, before the cock crows twice, you will deny me 3 times. But he said vehemently, "Even though I must die with you, I will not deny you." And all of them said the same. In an old hymn, Jesus asks, "Are you able to be crucified with me? Are you willing to follow me even to death?" And the sturdy dreamers answered, "To death we follow thee." It's a question for us too. How far are we willing to go to follow him? Are we willing, truly willing, to allow him to remold us, remake us, change our attitudes, change our opinions, our ideas, so that we are faithful disciples who will follow him? Or like the disciples, Do we say we will follow him, but in reality, are we only sturdy dreamers? Are ye able, said the Master, to be crucified with me? Yea, the sturdy dreamers answered, to the death we follow thee. Lord, we are able, our spirits are thine. Remold and make us like thee divine. Thy guiding radiance above us shall be a beacon to God, to love and loyalty. They went to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I pray." He took with him Peter and James and John and began to be distressed and agitated. And he said to them, "I am deeply grieved, even to death. Remain here and keep awake." And going a little farther, he threw himself on the ground and prayed that if it were possible, the hour might pass from him. He said, "Abba, Father, for you all things are possible. Remove this cup from me. Yet not what I want, but what you want." I stand amazed in the presence of Jesus the Nazarene, and wonder how he could love me, a sinner condemned unclean. Oh, how marvelous, oh, how wonderful, and my soul shall ever be. Oh, how marvelous, oh, how wonderful is my Savior's love for me. For me it was in the garden, he prayed, "Not my will, but thine." He had no tears for his own griefs, but sweat drops of blood for mine. Oh, how marvelous, oh, how wonderful, and my soul shall ever be. Oh, how marvelous, oh, how wonderful is my Savior's love for me. He came and found them sleeping, and he said to Peter, "Simon, are you asleep? Could you not keep awake 1 hour? Keep awake and pray that you may not come into the time of trial. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." And again he went away and prayed, saying the same words. And once more he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy, and they did not know what to say to him. He came a third time and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and taking your rest? Enough! The hour has come. The Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand." Immediately, while he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived, and with him there was a crowd with swords and clubs from the chief priests, the scribes, and the elders. Now the betrayer had given them a sign, saying, "The one I will kiss is the man. Arrest him and lead him away under guard." So when they came, he went up to him at once and said, "Rabbi," and kissed him. Then they laid hands on him and arrested him. But one of those who stood near drew his sword and struck the slave of the high priest, cutting off his ear. Then Jesus said to them, "Have you come out with swords and clubs to arrest me, as though I were a bandit? Day after day I was with you in the temple teaching, and you did not arrest me. But let the scriptures be fulfilled." All of them deserted him and fled. A certain young man was following him, wearing nothing but a linen cloth. They caught hold of him, but he left the linen cloth and ran off naked. They took Jesus to the high priest, and all the chiefs, the elders, and the scribes were assembled. Peter had followed him at a distance, right into the courtyard of the high priest, and he was sitting with the guards, warming himself at the fire. Now the chief priest and the whole council were looking for testimony against Jesus to put him to death, but they found none. For many gave false testimony against him, and their testimony did not agree. Some stood up and gave false testimony against him, saying, "We heard him say, 'I will destroy this temple that is made with hands, and in 3 days I will build another not made with hands.' But even on this point their testimony did not agree. Then the high priest stood up before them and asked Jesus, 'Have you no answer? What is it that they testify against you?' But he was silent and did not answer. Again, the high priest asked him, 'Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One?' Jesus said, 'I am. And you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of the power and coming with the clouds of heaven.' Then the high priest tore his clothes and said, 'Why do we still need witnesses? You have heard this blasphemy. What is your decision?' All of them condemned him as deserving death. Some began to spit on him, to blindfold him, and to strike him, saying, 'Prophesy!' The guards also took him and beat him. While Peter was below in the courtyard, one of the servant girls of the high priest came by. When she saw Peter warming himself, she stared at him and said, 'You also were with Jesus, the man from Nazareth.' But he denied it, saying, 'I do not know or understand what you are talking about.' And he went out to the forecourt. Then the cock crowed. And the servant girl, on seeing him, began again to say to the bystanders, 'This man is one of them.' But again he denied it. Then after a little while, the bystanders again said to Peter, 'Certainly you are one of them, for you are a Galilean.' But he began to curse, and he swore an oath, 'I do not know this man you are talking about.' At that moment, the cock crowed for the second time. Then Peter remembered that Jesus had said to him, 'Before the cock crows twice, you will deny me 3 times.' And he broke down and wept." Judas betrayed Jesus for money, and that had to hurt. John, Peter, and James had slept when Jesus had asked them to keep watch while he prayed. It's more pain for Jesus that night. Then just try to imagine the agony as Jesus watched his closest friends running away into the night. You know, Peter did follow, but at a distance, a safe distance. You know, how often do we want to follow at a safe distance? How often do we come to church on Sunday, hear his word, but make no response? Never give him another thought through the week? Never let him have influence on our thoughts, our actions, not allowing him to make any changes in our lives and our habits. It's just business as usual when we leave. we desert him. How often do we want to follow Jesus? We claim to follow him. We see oppression and injustice all around us. But it's better for us to just keep quiet. Don't say anything, except that that's just the way things are in our world. When Peter realizes what he has done, he wept bitterly. Peter blew it that night. He really blew it. Yet Jesus' love, his forgiveness, his grace was still there for Peter. He'll go on to be the rock that the church is built upon. Jesus' love, his forgiveness, his grace is still there for all of his disciples. Even though they betrayed him, they deserted him, they denied him. And Jesus' love, his forgiveness, his grace are here for us. Whenever we betray him, desert him, deny him, no matter what we do, no matter how bad it may seem, nothing, absolutely nothing can separate us from his love, a love so strong that it was willing to go to the cross for us. As soon as it was morning, the chief priest held a consultation with the elders and scribes and the whole council. They bound Jesus, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate. Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" He answered him, "You say so." Then the chief priest accused him of many things. Pilate asked him again, "Have you no answer? See how many charges they bring against you?" But Jesus made no further reply, so that Pilate was amazed. Now at the festival, he used to release a prisoner for them, anyone for whom they asked. Now a man called Barabbas was in prison with the rebels who had committed murder during the insurrection. So the crowd came and began to ask Pilate to do for them according to the custom. Then he answered them, "Do you want me to release for you the king of the Jews?" For he realized that it was out of jealousy that the chief priests had handed him over. But the chief priests stirred up the crowd to have him release Barabbas for them instead. Pilate spoke to them again. "Then what do you wish me to do with the man you call the king of the Jews?" They shouted back, "Crucify him!" Pilate asked them, "Why? What evil has he done?" But they shouted all the more, "Crucify him!" So Pilate, wishing to satisfy the crowd, released Barabbas for them. After flogging Jesus, he handed him over to be crucified. Then the soldiers led him into the courtyard of the palace, that is the governor's headquarters, and they called together the whole cohort, and they clothed him in a purple cloak, and after twisting some thorns into a crown, they put it on him, and they began saluting him, "Hail, King of the Jews!" They struck his head with a reed, spat upon him, and knelt down in homage to him. After mocking him, they stripped him of the purple cloak and put his own clothes on him. They led him out to crucify him. They compelled a passerby who was coming in from the country to carry his cross. It was Simon of Cyrene, the father of Alexander and Rufus. Then they brought Jesus to the place of Golgotha, which means the place of a skull. And they offered him wine mixed with myrrh, but he did not take it. And they crucified him and divided his clothes among them, casting lots to decide what each should take. It was 9 o'clock in the morning when they crucified him. The inscription of the charge against him read, "The King of the Jews." And with him they crucified 2 bandits, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by derided him, shaking their heads and saying, "Aha, you who would destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself and come down from the cross." In the same way, the chief priests, along with the scribes, were also mocking him among themselves and saying, "He saved others. He cannot save himself. Let the Messiah, the King of Israel, come down from the cross now so that we may see and believe." Those who were crucified with him also taunted him. Would you stand and join in together with hymn 504, "The Old Rugged Cross"? When it was noon, darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m. At 3 o'clock, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, "Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani," which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" When some of the bystanders heard it, they said, "Listen, he is calling for Elijah." And someone ran, filled a sponge with sour wine, put it on a stick, and gave it to him a drink, saying, "Wait, let us see whether Elijah will come to take him down." Then Jesus gave a loud cry and breathed his last.